Were you?
It's not paid by them.
Did you fly first class to Las Vegas?
Any other questions?
You could feel the anger tonight at a Board of Trustees meeting in Thornton Township. The board and citizens looking for accountability to their finances while the township...
It's often claimed that politics is a corrupt arena. But in the small town of Dolton, Illinois, the growing feud between Mayor Tiffany Henyard and her former ally, Trustee Carmen Carroll, has taken corruption and betrayal to shocking new heights. If you think celebrity gossip is full of drama, just wait until you hear this. Picture a political thriller so intense, it could rival any primetime drama. It's a story of power, deceit, and the collapse of alliances that once seemed unbreakable.
Everybody is the reason why you guys are not paying whatever that vendor is.
What was it for?
It was for shirts. That's what it's
So,
for.
what's going on between Tiffany Henyard and Carmen Carroll? For years, they were a powerful duo, working closely together. And some might even say they were partners in questionable actions. Henyard, once proud of her title as the super mayor of Dolton, led with a confidence that bordered on arrogance, pushing many people away in the process. Yet, despite her divisive leadership, no one had the courage to challenge her. Until recently, Carroll, Henyard's devoted ally, was the trustee who consistently supported her, justifying her decisions and overlooking the scandals that defined Henyard's time in office. However, everything changed when Carroll unexpectedly shifted her stance. Now, she's casting herself as a whistleblower, exposing Henyard's wrongdoings, leaving everyone to wonder what sparked this change and what is really happening behind closed doors.
Appointment, that's what the trustees I talked to are calling this. They say the news took them by surprise, and now they're talking to legal counsel to figure out their next.
Let's take a moment to understand the context. Tiffany Henyard was elected mayor of Dolton in 2021, vowing to bring change and progress to the village. However, her time in office quickly spiraled into controversy. Allegations of misusing public funds and targeting political opponents became the hallmark of her leadership, turning her tenure into anything but a stable one. As the residents of Dolton grew more disillusioned with her administration, Carmen Carroll appeared to remain firmly loyal. Or so it seemed. For 2 years, Carroll stood by Henyard, even as the mayor's actions became more and more questionable. Lavish taxpayer-funded trips, extravagant personal expenses, and a leadership style that crossed into authoritarian territory raised serious concerns. Yet, for reasons that remain unclear, Carroll chose to remain quiet. That is, until now. In a dramatic shift, Carroll recently made explosive accusations against Henyard. In an email to WGN, she accused the mayor of engaging in unethical and exploitative practices throughout her tenure. Carroll alleged that Henyard had manipulated employees, vendors, and residents to consolidate her own power, all while upholding a false image of success, funded by the hard-working taxpayers of Dolton.
So that's one of the reasons I vote no when we go through our board packets. It's like, some of this stuff, it's like you don't know exactly what it's for, and when you ask a question.
Carroll didn't stop at those accusations alone. She admitted openly that she had trusted Henyard and her administration for far too long. But once she began to see the cracks in the facade, she realized she could no longer remain silent. Her abrupt change in loyalty has triggered a wave of doubt. Is she genuinely trying to correct the past mistakes? Or is she just attempting to protect herself as everything unravels? Naturally, Henyard didn't handle this betrayal well. During a public meeting, she mocked Carroll, sarcastically dubbing her Lion Carroll, and brushed off the trustee's accusations as nothing more than a desperate attempt to stir up trouble. Henyard, who has often used insults and intimidation to silence her critics, clearly hadn't expected Carroll to turn on her so publicly.
Invoices, but those invoices lead to more questions, and sometimes we don't get questions, answers to those questions, and so it's not about clickbait, it's about just making sure that we're...
But why now? Why did Carroll choose this moment to speak out? Some suggest it's because the legal pressure on Henyard is growing, and Carroll realizes that if she doesn't separate herself, she could face repercussions as well. After all, Henyard is currently under federal investigation for various alleged crimes, including misusing taxpayer funds, corruption, and even attempting to cover up an alleged assault by one of her associates during a work trip to Las Vegas. Carol's timing is certainly raising doubts. Just as the FBI ramps up its investigation into Henyard, Carol suddenly decides to reveal everything she's witnessed over the past 2 years. Is this just a coincidence? Or is Carol trying to distance herself from the mayor before it's too late?
A one day purchase of over $40,000 to Amazon. And the main thing is,
The residents of Dolton are understandably skeptical of Carol's sudden call for transparency. For years, she was one of Henyard's most loyal backers, never questioning the mayor's decisions or the ethical concerns surrounding her administration. Now, with the pressure on Henyard increasing, Carol is attempting to position herself as the hero, the one who finally stood up to Dolton's dictator. But the people of Dolton aren't buying it. She's just jumping off a sinking ship, said one resident, voicing the opinion of many who believe Carol is just as complicit in the corruption that has tarnished the village. Many feel that anyone who backed Henyard should be removed from office, and Carol's attempt to distance herself now appears to be too little, too late. The anger is understandable, especially considering the long and damning list of accusations against Henyard. One of the most obvious problems is her extravagant spending. Reports reveal that Henyard and her team accumulated over $100,000 in travel expenses in just a few months. This included first-class flights, stays at luxury hotels, and lavish dinners, entirely funded by taxpayer dollars. One trip to Atlanta alone cost the village more than $9,000, with Henyard and her entourage staying at the luxurious Four Seasons Hotel.
I do not handle anything as relates to the credit cards. As you heard me speak today in my board meeting, I do not handle that.
Some of those charges are for you, though.
No, sir.
But the story doesn't stop there. Henyard is also accused of using village funds for personal shopping sprees at stores like Amazon, Target, and Walgreens. In one particularly startling incident, she allegedly spent $33,000 in just one day on Amazon. Given all this, it's no surprise that Dolton is now facing a $365 million deficit, a stark contrast to the $561 million surplus the village had when Henyard first took office. The financial mismanagement under her leadership extends beyond personal spending. There's also the issue of escalating police overtime costs. During Henyard's time in office, overtime expenses for officers have soared, with some officers earning more in overtime than their actual base salaries. For example, one officer, whose base salary was $87,200, earned an additional $110,000 in overtime. And the scandals keep piling up. Henyard's close associate, Deputy Police Chief Louis Lacey, was indicted on bankruptcy fraud charges for allegedly concealing assets and income in an attempt to avoid paying creditors.
The government always does it, is to go and investigate people around her. That's what they're doing.
Henyard's leadership, or rather her absence of it, has been sharply criticized. She is often portrayed as someone who doesn't understand the core principles of leadership, confusing authority with intimidation. As one observer put it, she seems to believe that being a boss means being a bully. Tiffany is like a first-time manager at Applebee's. She simply doesn't know how to lead. She believes managing is about being in charge, but it's much more. It's a tremendous responsibility. What a disgrace of a person. Perhaps the most troubling accusations against Henyard involve her alleged use of the police department to target political rivals. Former Dolton trustee Valeria Stubbs has accused Henyard of orchestrating a drive-by shooting at her home as retaliation for speaking out against the mayor. According to Stubbs, 2 of her tenants' cars were shot at in the early morning, and she believes Henyard was responsible for the attack. Stubbs also claimed that Henyard harassed her continuously, showing up at her home with a group of police officers and city workers in an attempt to intimidate her.
Officers to be on the street fighting crime. And instead, we have several officers that are riding around.
Then, there was the assault scandal during a business trip to Las Vegas. A close associate of Henyard reportedly assaulted a village employee. When the victim reported the incident to Henyard, the mayor allegedly attempted to cover it up, advising the victim that speaking out would harm her reputation. In the end, the victim was placed on unpaid leave and ultimately fired. This incident has only intensified calls for Henyard and her associate to step down. With the growing controversy, It's clear why Carlisle is now trying to distance herself from Henyard. But for many, this move is seen as far too little. Too late. Carlisle's involvement in some of Henyard's most controversial actions, like the $110,000 donation to Henyard's cancer charity on the same day its paperwork was filed, raises serious questions about her integrity. Her sudden decision to speak out now, after staying silent for so long, only strengthens the suspicion that she's trying to safeguard her own interests.
Unfortunately, we knew it was going to be a little messy, but it's just something we felt important that had to be done, that should be done. So, but like I said,
The people of Dalton have had enough. They're fed up with the corruption, lies, and mismanagement. As one frustrated resident put it, "Why can't we have transparency with our tax dollars? It's our money, and we deserve to know how it's being spent." But it's not just the residents losing faith in Henyard and her administration. The shift is also taking place within Dalton's government itself. Carlisle's betrayal could just be the beginning. As legal pressures intensify, more of Henyard's allies may start to distance themselves, leaving the once powerful supermayor vulnerable and alone. So, what's next? Will Henyard's administration collapse under the weight of its own corruption? Will more trustees come forward? Or will they keep shielding themselves by staying silent? And what about Carlisle? Will she be held accountable for her role? Or will she manage to distance herself from Henyard's downfall?
administration can adhere to some financial limits. We're not looking to necessarily.
Meanwhile, the people of Dalton are left wondering who they can rely on. With the local government in turmoil and leaders more focused on self-preservation than serving the public, it's clear that change is urgently needed. But will that change emerge from within? Or will external intervention be necessary to clean up the mess? Only time will tell.